In the heart of the Minecraft world, where the sun shines square and the cows moo in blocky harmony, there lived a boy named Steve. Now, Steve wasn't your ordinary builder. Sure, he could craft a sword, dig for diamonds, and build a mansion out of dirt, but deep inside, Steve was looking for something more, something magical. One peaceful morning, as Steve was harvesting wheat and talking to his pet chicken Bob, who, by the way, believed he was a parrot, a strange humming sound echoed through the forest. Steve froze. Bob clucked dramatically. He turned to the hills, where the sound seemed to call him. It was soft, like a melody made of whispers. And there, hidden behind a mossy boulder, was a mysterious glowing cube, floating midair and spinning slowly. It pulsed with a rhythm, as if alive. Sound cube, mysterious hum. As Steve reached out to touch it, a jolt of blue energy zipped through his fingers and into the sky. The clouds above darkened for a moment, then clear. The cube had vanished. But something had changed. Back home, Steve noticed his crafting table now shimmered faintly. He tried to craft a regular torch, but instead, poof, it became a floating lantern that sang lullabies. Bob was impressed. Steve was confused. Then came the dreams. Strange visions of floating islands, ancient temples, and a voice, soft, echoing, whispering. The cube of creation has awakened. The realms are shifting. Steve knew one thing. His world had just gotten a whole lot weirder.
Hello! I'll help you get to your favorite coffee shop. Let's begin! Start by walking straight ahead for about 20 steps. When you reach the crosswalk, wait for the signal, then cross to your left. Continue walking straight for about 30 steps. You'll pass a bakery on your right. When you reach the next corner, turn right. Your coffee shop will be just ahead on the left. Enjoy your coffee. Let me know if you need help on your way back.
Their first stop was the floating desert. Sand floated in the air like confetti, and the ground whispered secrets with every step. There, Steve met a peculiar creature, half llama, half librarian, named Greg. Greg offered help for a price. One riddle solved, and the key is yours, Greg said. So Steve listened. I have no eyes, yet I see. I have no mouth, yet I speak. I hold all truths and secrets deep. What am I? Steve blinked. Bob blinked. Then Bob clucked 3 times. A book! Steve shouted. Greg grinned and revealed the first key of imagination, shaped like a golden feather. 1 key down, 2 to go. But Steve had no idea what bizarre, bendy adventures awaited in the jungle of Twisted. Steve and Bob arrived at the jungle of Twisted Time, just before sunset, or maybe sunrise. Time was acting weird. The trees moved when you weren't looking. Vines untangled themselves, then re-knotted just to confuse you. Steve looked at his watch. It was ticking backwards. I think time's broken, Steve muttered. A voice echoed from behind a massive purple fern. Time isn't broken. It's just misunderstood. Out stepped a monkey, wearing tiny glasses and holding a sundial? Name's TikTok, said the monkey, keeper of temporal logic and banana snacks. Steve raised an eyebrow. To get the second key, TikTok continued, You must pass the time challenge. Ready? Before Steve could answer, the jungle twisted. He was suddenly 10 years younger. Bob? A tiny chick with fluff instead of feathers. What's going on? Steve shouted. You have 60 seconds to fix the future while stuck in the past. TikTok laughed and vanished. Steve spotted. One pointed to midnight, one to noon. The last, it was spinning wildly. Bob chirped and fluttered toward the spinning one. Of course, Steve realized. Time isn't linear here, it's alive. He hit the spinning clock with his pickaxe. It shattered, then rewound itself, and everything snapped back into place. TikTok reappeared, clapping slowly. Impressive. Most players get stuck in toddler form. He handed Steve the second key of imagination, glowing blue and shaped like an hourglass. 2 down, 1 to go. As they left the jungle, time bent forward again. Steve's beard returned. Bob, still a chick. Apparently time wasn't done with him. Next stop, the Netherlight Caverns, where things weren't just weird, they were dark. The journey to the Netherlight Caverns wasn't easy. Steve and Bob had to cross treacherous lands, avoid lava geysers, and swim through rivers that glowed an eerie green. But as they reached the entrance, something felt off. The cavern's mouth loomed before them, dark and silent, as if waiting for them to enter. A cold wind brushed past Steve's face, sending a chill down his spine. "Stay close," Steve said, gripping his pickaxe tightly. Bob, who was still a chick, clucked nervously but flapped his tiny wings as best as he could. They stepped inside, and the air grew thick. The further they ventured, the darker it became. The walls of the cavern shimmered with faint lights, but they didn't seem to come from any natural source. It was as though the darkness itself was alive, watching them, waiting. Then a voice boomed from the shadows. "Who dares enter the cavern of lost souls?" Steve didn't flinch. "I do, and I'm here to find the third key." The voice chuckled, almost like it was made of the very darkness around them. "To claim the third key, you must face the trials of the forgotten," it said, echoing through the cavern. Steve squinted, trying to make out any figures in the dark. Suddenly, glowing shapes began to form in the air. Images of people, animals, and places Steve didn't recognize. "These are the lost," the voice continued. "They never found what they were looking for. Will you succeed where they failed?" The first trial appeared. A giant stone door that needed to be unlocked. But it wasn't just any door. It was filled with intricate symbols and carvings, ancient and unknown. Steve examined the door carefully, tapping the symbols with his pickaxe. Bob chirped, staring at one of the carvings. It looked like a combination of a chicken and a dragon. Steve muttered. "Let's try this." He pressed the symbols in a specific order. Chicken, dragon, chicken, dragon. The door groaned, then creaked open. Inside, a glow, shaped like the final key, floated in the air. Suddenly, the cavern seemed to shift again, this time flooding with a burst of light from the crystal. But something wasn't right. The ground shook beneath them. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling. A massive shadow emerged from the darkness. A creature, half human, half beast, its eyes glowing a fiery red. "You think the key is yours," it growled. "You have to take it from me first." Steve stepped forward, swinging his pickaxe as the creature charged. But Bob was no longer just a chick. Somehow in the chaos, Bob had transformed into a dragon chick. Tiny wings, but an unmistakable fiery breath. Together, they fought the beast, dodging, diving, and finally, with a swift strike, Steve used his pickaxe to shatter the creature's glowing heart. The creature fell, and the crystal key descended into Steve's hands. Congratulations, the voice echoed. You have passed the trials of the forgotten. The third key is yours, Steve. Now, on to the next part. Bob, still a dragon chick, flapped his wings proudly. With the 3 keys now in their possession, they knew the final destination was near. It was time to uncover the secret of the creation cube. With the 3rd key now in his grasp, Steve felt a surge of excitement, but also a deep sense of foreboding. The journey was far from over. The creation cube, the ultimate prize, was still out of reach. Steve turned to Bob, who was still flapping his tiny dragon wings, looking like a miniature fire breather. "All right, Bob," Steve said with a grin. "We've got everything we need. Let's head to the heart of the Nether and unlock the cube." But before they could take a step, a strange rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The cavern walls trembled, and a blinding light erupted from the depths of the earth. Suddenly, the entire cavern began to collapse. The walls cracked, and the floor beneath them gave way, sending Steve and Bob tumbling into the abyss. They fell, spiraling down into a vast underground chamber. At the bottom, a massive pool of liquid lava bubbled, its heat so intense that it could be felt even from a distance. Across the molten lake, standing on a platform of solid rock, was the creation cube. The cube pulsed with an energy unlike anything Steve had ever encountered, an energy that seemed to reach out and beckon him. But as Steve and Bob approach, a figure appeared before them, a silhouette rising from the shadows. It was a tall figure, cloaked in darkness, with glowing red eyes. "So you've made it this far," the figure said, its voice cold and eerie. "But you are too late. The cube has chosen its master." Steve froze. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure stepped forward, revealing itself fully. It was a dark sorceress, her face obscured by a mask of obsidian. Her robe fluttered in the air, as if it were alive. "I am Maljosha," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "And I have waited for this moment. The cube belongs to me." Bob, sensing the danger, let out a fiery roar. But Maljosha waved her hand, and Bob's flames were instantly extinguished. "You think you can stop me?" Maljosha sneered. "You, who are nothing more than a simple miner, and your little dragon chick?" Steve didn't hesitate. He gripped his pickaxe and stepped forward, ready to face the sorceress. "The cube has been waiting for a while." "Claim it," Maljosha continued, her eyes narrowing. "But you, Steve, are nothing more than a pawn in its game." Steve's heart raced. This was it, the final showdown. He looked at the 3 keys, now glowing brightly in his hands. The power within them was undeniable. But could he unlock the cube before Maljosha stopped him? With a swift motion, Steve slotted the 3 keys into the cube. There was a deafening roar, and the cube began to glow brighter, pulsing with power. Maljosha lunged toward Steve, but in that moment, the cube unleashed its full force. A brilliant wave of light erupted from it, knocking Maljosha back, her figure dissolving into the air like smoke. For a moment, everything went silent, and then the cube opened. Inside, a swirling vortex of colors and shapes formed, a gateway to another realm. "The secret," Steve whispered in awe. "It's not just power, it's a doorway." The cube was not merely an object of immense power. It was a portal, a link, their understanding. "Steve," Bob said, his voice now soft with wonder, "this is bigger than we thought." Steve nodded, his heart pounding. It's just beginning. And as the portal shimmered before them, Steve knew that the greatest adventure was still to come. The swirling vortex within the cube beckoned, its colors shifting in mesmerizing patterns. For a moment, Steve and Bob stood frozen, caught in the pull of the unknown. "Do you think we should go in?" Bob asked nervously, his tiny dragon wings fluttering in the air. Steve stared at the portal, feeling both fear and excitement welling up inside him. He knew this was no ordinary adventure. The cube had opened a gateway to something far beyond their world, something ancient, powerful, and full of secrets. "I don't know, Bob," Steve said, his voice filled with both determination and wonder. "But we've come this far. We can't turn back now." With one final glance at the empty chamber behind them, Steve took a deep breath and stepped forward, crossing the threshold of the portal. Bob followed close behind, his little wings flapping as they both plunged into the unknown. The moment they entered the vortex, everything around them dissolved into a blur of light and color. The world as they knew it seemed to vanish, replaced by swirling galaxies and nebulas stretching out in every direction. Where are we?" Bob asked, his voice shaking with awe. Steve glanced around, his eyes wide with amazement. The space around them was not a place could comprehend. They were standing in a vast, endless void, an expanse of infinite stars, swirling mists, and strange energies that pulsed in the distance. Before them, a massive floating structure appeared, its edges glowing with a soft, ethereal light. It seemed ancient, like something that had been waiting for them for millennia. "This is it," Steve whispered, his voice filled with reverence. "This is the heart of the cube." The structure loomed closer, and Steve felt a strange pull toward it, as if the cube itself was guiding them. As they approached, a voice echoed through the void, a deep, resonating tone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome, Steve. Welcome, Bob." The voice was familiar, yet strange, a voice from a time long past. "You have unlocked the cube. Now you must face what lies within." Steve turned to Bob, his heart racing. "What is this place? What are we supposed to do?" Bob looked around, his little wings quivering. "Idea, Steve, but I feel something watching us." Suddenly, a beam of light shot down from the structure, surrounding Steve and Bob in its glow. The light was warm, yet otherworldly, and it seemed to pulse with an energy that resonated deep within Steve's core. "Only the worthy may proceed," the voice continued. "To unlock the full potential of the cube, you must pass the trial." A massive door slowly creaked open within the structure, revealing a dark passage leading deeper into the heart of the cube. Without hesitation, Steve stepped forward, determined to face whatever challenge awaited. Bob followed, though he seemed far less certain. The passage was narrow, its walls lined with glowing symbols that shifted and changed as they moved. It felt like they were walking through a living memory, a place where time itself was fluid and unpredictable. As they reached the end of the tunnel, the door before them slowly opened, revealing an enormous chamber, its ceiling lost. In the center of the room stood a pedestal upon which sat a glowing orb. "The trial begins," the voice intoned. Steve felt the air grow heavy with tension as the orb began to glow brighter. He could feel its power, and with it, a flood of memories, visions of distant lands, ancient civilizations, and forgotten secrets rushed into his mind. The orb was showing him everything he had ever done, every decision he had made. And then, the orb did something unexpected. It showed him his future. Steve gasped as images of countless possible outcomes flooded his mind, some filled with victory, others with loss. Some of his choices led to greatness, others to ruin. "This is your trial," the voice said again. "You must choose. Choose wisely, and the cube will grant you its power. Fail, and you will be lost forever." Steve's hands trembled as he reached toward the orb. The choice before him was monumental. He could take the power of the cube and reshape the world, but power came great responsibility. The future he saw could be both beautiful and terrifying. "What will you choose, Steve?" the voice asked. Steve took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He knew what he had to do. He closed his eyes, trusting his instincts, and placed his hand on the orb. Steve and Bob returned to their world, different than before. Not just because they had touched the cube, but because they had seen what the world could become. And they knew it was their responsibility to shape it. Back in their village, the people had changed too. Word of the adventure had spread. They weren't just villagers anymore. They were believers, believers in hope, in magic, in each other. Steve built a sanctuary, not a fortress, but a garden. At its heart, they placed a replica of the cube, not to worship, but to remember. To remember that true power is not what you take, but what you protect. Bob became a legend in his own right, not as a fighter, but as a teacher. He taught young piglins about peace, about history, and about flying with honor. But every now and then, Steve would walk up the hill behind the garden, where the wind whispered secrets from the stars. And he would wonder, was that really the end of the adventure? Because deep down, he felt hadn't just awakened power. It had awakened the universe. And somewhere out there, in the unknown, a new mystery was waiting. Something older, something darker. But Steve wasn't afraid, because now he knew who he was. Not just a builder, not just a warrior. He was a guardian. And guardians don't run from darkness. They light the way through it. The end. Please subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and like.